here, Dr. Pompa. Jackie, pre-diabetes. We see type 2 at Josh. A lot of type 2. There's type 1, type 2, pre-diabetes. Well, I gotta say, like, this is the perfect place for all of you to be.
Gosh.
We are so excited because look, this is the information I wish my dad had when he had his diagnosis of diabetes. It's very different than anything I've been taught. Man, I'm so excited for you to go into this, Dr. Pompa, in a couple minutes.
Can't wait, man. Honestly. Well, there's something about seeing that, their responses, what they have. It just like I think you felt the same way. I got so excited
It's like
because they're going to
because
hear an answer they never heard, right? It's like
exactly.
that's what excites me.
Yeah, exactly. They have no idea what they're in for right now. And I remember when I first heard this information for you, it was just like, wait, what? How come no other doctor or health coach or practitioner ever told me this information before? And it changed my life and it changed the trajectory of my entire career. And man, this is so exciting. I see somebody, Nicole said meds aren't working. Yeah, Dr. Pomp is going to discuss exactly why that is, insulin resistance. There's some practitioners on here. I see some health coaches on here. Oh, this is good. This is going to be super fun. Well, I have to say this. Dr. Pompa is somebody who I've learned a ton from. I call him the goat, as you know, Dr.
He does.
Pompa.
He does all the time.
Every time, the greatest of all time. And I've been a health coach for many years. I've been in the health space for 17 plus years, and I've interviewed 900 plus people on my Metabolic Freedom podcast. And I keep saying it over and over. It's this information that you're going to learn from the GOAT, Dr. Pompa, that is unlike anything out there, not just from the conventional allopathic sense, but even the functional holistic sense. It's very, very different. And it's life changing, especially for those of you who are on here because you're overweight, because you have high blood pressure, pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes. It's not a life sentence.
Mm.
And it's really inspiring to me to see hundreds of you on here because this is going to be something you're going to look back and remember for the rest of your life, like I did
You
when
know,
I,
you did. I remember the seminar. I
yeah.
remember where you are. And I remember you coming up to me, after I speak, a lot of people come up to me, but man, you stuck out in my mind. And I said, man, this guy's going to be serving this mission. And I never, you were at every event I ever did after that. And then you ended up in my platinum coaching group,
It's
which by the
true.
way, was just doctors at that time. You were one of I can't say the first because there was Tammy, right? But
Yeah.
a small little group that I would invite in this platinum group of doctors that I trained for 20 years at that time, 15 maybe. I don't know. How many years ago was that?
That was in 2018. So
Yeah.
7 years ago.
Yeah, 7 years ago. But yeah, and I let you into the program, man, because I saw this. I saw your passion. I saw your resolve. In a little bit of a story there, you had lost 70
80
pounds,
pounds. Yeah.
80 pounds, but then you gained a lot of it back. Am I
Yeah.
right? And then a lot of the toxins came out, and then you became insulin resistant to a different degree.
Yep.
Yeah, tell that story. Is just a little bit.
Exactly true. And look, believe me, I was doing keto fasting. I was doing paleo. I was working out in my CrossFit gym and nothing worked. And I was spending a ton of money on supplements and I didn't notice any difference. The weight just kept coming back. I had brain fog. Sometimes I would wake up in the morning and the fatigue was just so debilitating where I would just cancel everything on my calendar just to lay in bed all day. And I remember, and this is going to be the feeling you're going to experience for those watching this right now. That's why I'm really excited. I remember when I was watching you at your conference in 2018. It was April 2018. I just the first session. It was you, Dr. Pompa, and that 45-minute session, hour session, just like we're going to do today. I learned more in that hour than I did in the last 10 years studying health and nutrition. And that's going to be the same thing for everybody on here. You're going to learn more in the next 60 minutes than you've learned your entire life when it comes to actually getting healthy at a cell level. But it was kind of like I explain it, you removing the head from my body and flipping my head around several times and putting it back. And everything I thought about living healthy and feeling good was the complete opposite. And ever since I learned that from you, I applied it. Brain fog went away. I started to become lean again. I started to have amazing energy levels, and I could say I feel right now the healthiest I've ever felt in my life. And that's thanks to the exact information you're going to share with us today, Dr. Pompa. And I'm
And you're
super pumped.
autoimmune. I mean, you were severe
Autoimmune.
autoimmune,
Yeah.
severe, and more than just the symptoms that you just mentioned. I mean, it was a pretty dramatic turnaround that I watched in your health over the 7 years. You're a different person, bro. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Well, thanks to you and the information that we're going to get into right now. And you're right. I used to have autoimmune flare-ups every single day. I don't get any flare-ups anymore because we got to the exact cause of what we're going to talk about today.
Mm.
Dr. Pompa is a world-renowned expert on cellular health and detoxification. I just mentioned he is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. He's really the most brilliant, loving man that you could find and get this information. And today you're going to discover the root causes behind diabetes, insulin resistance, and how you could actually restore your metabolic health. So here's where I want to start with you, Dr. Pompa. I want to discuss why traditional diabetes treatments often fail. And it's exactly what I saw with my dad. And
Mm.
first question I want to ask you, Dr. Pompa, is this: why do so many people struggle to get lasting results from the conventional treatment of diabetes that are usually using medication, dieting, and exercise?
Well, the short answer is they're not really addressing the real cause. It sounds trite to say such a thing, right? Um, when people would say, yes, but I'm addressing my diet, and isn't that the cause? Well, what you're going to hear is part of the cause, but not the big cause of why we have an epidemic right now of not just insulin resistance, but hormone resistance, meaning your cells can't hear your hormones, even if you make them normal or they still are normal in your blood. So you could take a drug, whether it be insulin, whether it be thyroid hormone, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, whatever it is, you can make it better on a blood test. But if that hormone is not able to get its message or itself in the cell, you don't feel well, despite all the diet changes, all the medication, all the supplements. There's a reason for that. And to answer your question, that's why so many people, if you read the comments that are coming in, say, I'm doing all these things, right? And I'm still not well. I still don't feel it. I still don't have energy, right? Even if your blood levels look better. And some people are saying my blood levels aren't even getting better. And there's a reason for that too. But fact is that they're not getting to where the real problem is. 20 years of teaching this. And I feel like the only ground I've made, Ben, is when I started telling people directly, like these people right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're right, Dr. Pompa, and I saw this with my dad who suffered with diabetes and eventually created a stroke and a heart attack, and he ended up losing his life. It's a big purpose of mine to get this information out there so others don't suffer like
And by
he
the way,
did.
diabetes doesn't kill people, does it? It's
Correct.
complications
Yeah.
that go along with it. Heart attacks, strokes, cancer, losing limbs, neuropathies. I mean, all of these things and every other complicating disease happens when you are in this state of inflammation from a condition called diabetes that they're throwing drugs at. And even diets aren't working because they're not getting to the cause.
That's exactly right. It's rare to die from diabetes. People are dying with diabetes, not from it. It's what the diabetes leads to, as you just mentioned. I saw it with my dad. We see it all the time. With the conventional treatment of diabetes with medication, you are spot on because they're treating the high blood sugar, which is the symptom. It's a result
That's
of
right.
the actual cause. You're discussing here actually getting to the interference, getting to the cause. It's not about masking the symptom. It's about
Right.
finding out what that interference is, correct?
That's right. Yeah, if you're just trying to fix a blood sugar problem or even an insulin problem, you're missing it. You're missing the problem. That you're too far downstream, as we say, for where the problem actually is. So that's what we need to hit.
So let's explain that a little bit deeper because when I first saw you explain the cell and how this works, it really was just light bulb moment after light bulb moment. And I want this for every single person watching this. So address,
Mhm.
Dr. Pompa, how specifically is this happening at a cell level?
Okay. And I've drawn a lot of cells, and I hope everyone can see that
That's a
clearly.
good one.
Yeah, that is a good one, right? That is a very good cell, especially when I draw it on a little thing. I have trouble. but that's a good one. Okay, we have 50 to 70 trillion of these in our body, the cell, right? And so if you've watched me and seen me on social media, you hear me say, if you fix the cell, you get well. And doctors, if I'm addressing you, if you don't fix the cell, you're not going to get people well. And you're just going to keep chasing the problem, the symptoms, and not really get to the root of why people are sick. But on every cell are receptors to hormones. And I just briefly said this, right? That thyroid hormone, of course, we're talking a lot about insulin, but I could say estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And I'm putting all these because people are taking a lot of these hormones, right? Because they want to feel better. But they'll all say the same thing. It's like, yeah, my blood levels got a little better or even perfectly better, and yet I don't feel better. I kind of felt better in the beginning, but now I don't feel better. And that's the way it is with diabetes. The same thing's happening, right? It's like, great, my blood sugar looks a little better. My doctor's congratulating me, but like, I still have all these problems. Like, I still have massive brain fog. I still have anxiety. I still don't sleep well. I still have aches and pains. I still have neuropathies. The list goes on, even gut problems. This is the problem. So here we go. So it doesn't matter when your blood levels of any of these hormones like insulin are made normal by medications or whatever it is. These hormones have to connect to one of these receptors. No different than your cell phone has to connect to a tower for you to get the message, right? There's no tower around, doesn't matter if you have $1,000 cell phone, it's useless. Same with your hormones. It has to dock onto one of these receptors and get itself or its message in the cell. And we feel well. And when that's happening to all of our hormones, we stay lean. Our brain works. Our energy lasts throughout the day. Oh, and you don't get weird anxiety because your body has to use cortisol and adrenaline for energy because you're not getting hormones in the cell. And a lot of these hormones determine how we make energy in our mitochondria, right? That's where we make ATP. But if you're not getting these hormones working at the cellular level, you don't make normal energy. I mean, it's just that simple. So then the better question is what's stopping these hormones from getting their message in the cell? Well, it's simple. Something called inflammation. We've all heard of it, right? I mean, inflammation. I mean, Time Magazine, silent killer, deadly killer, cause of all conditions from cancer, diabetes. I mean, it was all on that list in Time Magazine. But this is what they mean. They don't mean the inflammation of the sore shoulder. They mean cellular inflammation, which not only blocks our hormones from working despite blood levels, but also it stops us getting good nutrients in the cell. And worse yet, the toxins out of the cell. Because when you make energy in this mitochondria, you make waste that has to exit that cell. Otherwise, it starts to build up in the cell. No different than if I burned wood in this fireplace, I would make smoke. If the damper's open, great, smoke goes out. So think of this membrane here that's inflamed as the damper. When it's not inflamed, things are leaving no problem. But when it's inflamed, things aren't leaving at all. It's a closed damper. Some people call it closed door syndrome. Well, if I had one thing of like why most people don't feel well, why they can't fix their diabetes or thyroid condition or whatever it is, it's because their doors are closed door syndrome. They're not getting the good nutrition in. They're not getting the hormones in. And worse yet, they're not getting the toxins out. So here's what happens. The toxins continue to build up in this cell, just like smoke filling your home. Your energy continues to plummet. As energy goes down, your natural detox pathways that are in this cell start to go down. And that's even worse because now even more toxins are building up, and then even something worse happens. Inside every cell is your DNA. Now, I don't know how many of you heard of epigenetics, but that means genes can be triggered. Okay. And look at that. I froze myself. Hold on one second. I don't know why that happens every once in a while, but it happens. Am I
There
back?
you go.
No. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
But the DNA actually gets turned on, bad genes. So literally a diabetes gene can actually be turned on. So listen, there's good news here. First of all, the old dogma that you've got diabetes or any condition because your mom or dad had it, it's been disproven. It's been disproven since the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
Well, I'm proof of it right now.
Yeah, exactly. So your DNA is not your destiny. There was a Time magazine article that I used in one of my PowerPoint. DNA is not your destiny. And it used like diabetes as an example. No, that gene gets triggered. But what triggers it? That's what you should be asking yourself. These toxins that are building up in the cell because of cellular inflammation, then that gene gets turned on. So, and by the way, the less and less energy you have, it's called the Gibbs free energy equation. As you know, these toxins build up, right? You have inflammation that builds up, energy drops, inflammation builds up. So all of that feeds back into one another. But here's what I want you to understand. The better question here you should be asking, I hope, is what is causing the cellular inflammation? Because we started this whole teaching by that very question. Why did most of you have done diet changes? Why have most of you done medication, supplements, I'm sure, and yet you're still not well? Right there. Inflammation, cellular inflammation, blocking the hormone receptors, blocking from getting the good things in your cells, and keeping toxins build up in the cells. And as the toxins build up, the energy drops in your power. Here's a better example. This is a true story. A better example is literally, we were in high school and I was the designated driver with all my friends. True story, Ben, and I don't know if you ever heard me tell this, but we were at a party and my job was to drive everyone home. After the party, we get everyone home. I was the designated driver and I'm driving along. And at first, no problem. And then all of a sudden, I'm putting more and more power down into the gas and the car's going slower and slower. And it was a slow process. It didn't happen immediately. I'm blaming my friends of how heavy they are because I'm like, this car's barely going to the point where it finally dies. The next scene, I'm on the phone calling my parents to pick us up, right? It's like because the car absolutely went dead. Okay, what we found out the next day is someone who didn't like one of us put an apple in the exhaust pipe. Okay, so what happened to the power of the engine? Lower and lower and lower until eventually the engine went kaput. Many of you feel that way, I'm sure, but that's the point of inflammation, blocking the exhaust, meaning that's what an exhaust does in a car, by the way, is it gets rid of the toxic from burning gasoline in an engine. If you don't get rid of it, the power drops. No different in your cell. Right. So, and here's the thing, by the way, car enthusiasts know this. If you want your car to gain power, put on a dual exhaust, meaning open up those pipes even more. So the point is that toxins are the number one cause of cellular inflammation. Why aren't we hearing more about that? Right? It's like, how did I get my life back? How did you change your life? It's like we dealt with that problem right there. Toxins come in and they attach to fatty membranes. By the way, your cell membranes are made of fat. It's called a lipid bilayer, 2 layers of fat, which is, there's a saying, life and death. It's not my saying. I wish it was. Life and death begins on your cell membranes, meaning how healthy you are is determined by this cell membrane. Life and death, to the point of life and death. Your hormone health, the solution to diabetes is determined right here. So toxins come in and they attach to that. They cause damage to these hormone receptors, insulin receptors. They literally damage it so they don't work. Damaging the cell phone tower so the cell phone doesn't work. Okay, and then they drive inflammation, which blunts all of your hormones receptors. People don't understand that when you have insulin resistance, meaning your cells resisting it, it's happening to other hormones. And you have hormone resistance. Look at these. I keep freezing in these like funny things. Someone should take a picture of that one. That's pretty funny.
That's a funny shot there. I think
It
you're
is a
back.
funny shot. All right, yeah, there I am back. Anyway, so and that was a long answer to a really important question, though. That's why you still don't feel well. That's why nothing you're doing is working with all your best efforts. I mean, so there's hope. There's hope.
There is. Let me just recap that because this is just too important not to understand what you just broke down there. This is what gave me my life back and what will give you your life back. When you're taking a medication for your diabetes, for example, it's not lowering inflammation at a cell level. It's looking at the symptom, which is the high blood sugar. You could even change your diet, and you probably have tried that already. You could even start exercising and taking different supplements, and there, you might see some improvement, maybe not. However, if you have too many of these toxins in your body, in your cells, it will create this cellular inflammation. You said it's not acute inflammation like a sore shoulder or a sprained ankle. This is chronic inflammation. This means every day for months, for years, for the rest of your life until you take care of it. And when you have that chronic inflammation, all of those receptor sites that need to hear the hormones, not just insulin, but
Yep,
all of them,
that's
thyroid,
right.
all 600 plus hormones, they're
Hmm.
not getting into the cell. They're not doing their job efficiently. So
Right.
you're going to feel more fatigued. Your blood levels might look okay, but nothing's happening at the cell level. So you still don't feel okay. And then you have this toxicity buildup where the bad stuff cannot get out of the cell and it just perpetuates into this vicious cycle. So
That's it.
inflammation. I think most people have heard of it. They might have done some blood tests for inflammation, but when I first heard you talk about a specific test that you only offered to your doctors for cellular inflammation, it made all the difference to me because it actually helped me understand. And I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later, correct?
Yeah, matter of fact, I'm going to offer. I'm going to make sure that they get the test. I tell you hear me say every one of my doctors I've trained. I say start with a cellular inflammation test. It's different than your typical blood test for inflammation because it's more general. But we're looking at something called melendaldehyde, where it literally is the first indicator that somebody has cellular inflammation. Why is that important? Because if you have cellular inflammation, then I know that we can help this person. I would never say I have the answer to everything. I wouldn't. God, no doubt in my mind, gave me some very unique answers for diabetes, even thyroid conditions, which, by the way, they stack. You start with one, you end up with the other, and other hormone problems, right? And I suffered from it. That's the only reason I know. And I have to tell this part of the story. But we're going to, anyways, that to close that loop, we're going to make that very test that the doctors use
Awesome.
available to the group because that is where you start. If you have cellular inflammation, it's why nothing works. It's why you don't feel well. Um, I literally there was my when I was sick, and I got sick about 1999, and it started with fatigue, right, and then it went to just brain fog, weird gut issues. I became super sound sensitive. I couldn't sleep either. I couldn't get to sleep, or I would wake up and I couldn't get back to sleep. Maddening anxiety at times, in and out of it. And but life became really, really hard. And I'm just glossing over it because my wife would tell you it was a lot worse than that. There was times where I didn't want to live, I'll be honest with you. But all of my hormones were dysfunctional and I knew it. And I played the hormone game for a bit, right? But I remember the day that I went and got a blood test because I knew my thyroid, my adrenals, all of it were shot. And I came back $5,000 worth of blood work, and the guy looked at me, the doctor, and was like, "You're healthier than me." And I didn't want to hear that day. I wanted to find something, find cancer, anything. So that was a bad day. But I my thyroid numbers were normal, even though my hair was thinning. I had every sign, right? I mean, I had massive hormone dysfunction. Although my hormones looked good, maybe in 5 years they wouldn't have, right? And I could have taken hormones and made them look better. But the point is they didn't tell me that was the problem. My cells were massively inflamed because I had massive mercury buildup, unknowing to me, right? And there's so many different types of toxins that we expose in people that have this problem that stick to those membranes and drive that inflammation. But anyways, it was about a year or so later that a bright endocrinologist that I was working with said, I think you have mercury toxicity. And I did a blood test. It was normal. Wrong test. Anyways, my cells were massively inflamed, and that was the issue. But this is the part of the story that matters the most to me. Because I had no answers, my wife, we had two young boys at the time. We have 5 kids now. She literally, and I'm sure she was on her knees many times asking God for an answer. But this particular time, God spoke to her heart. Not only is he going to get me well, but I'm going to take a message to the world. And I have to say, when she would say that to me, I never wanted to hear it. Never. Because my exact words to her were, I can't even help myself. So how in the world do you expect me to put that on my shoulders? To me, it was a weight. But here I am today. Here I am, the day you saw me at the seminar, right? I've been able, because of those prophetic words and that promise that my wife held on to that I didn't, being able to affect millions of people. And yeah, so, here I am because she was right or God was right through her.
Mm.
So everything that I've been teaching this and the answers to this, more importantly, I know came from him. And
Mm,
that's where my boldness is not me. You know, I always say I'm not smart enough. And everything that was born, you've heard a lot of those stories, Ben, right? It's like how they
yeah.
came that know they I know it's not me. I know it's him. And put your trust that there's an answer, a unique answer that's from him, not me. And you watch your life change. I always tell people, put your trust in him, not me. Right?
Yeah.
God's just doing it through me. I didn't choose this. He chose me in it, and my wife knew it. So, anyways, important for me to say that.
Yeah, no, it gave you your life back, and now your wife was right. You're carrying this message to the world, and I wish I would have known it when my dad had diabetes. Unfortunately, I didn't get this information until he had passed on, and it's part of my passion and my mission as well to get
Pain
this
to purpose,
information, pain
Ben.
to
Pain
purpose.
to purpose.
Exactly.
I sensed it that day that you walked up to me, that you were pain to purpose. I knew you weren't normal. I knew you were called to this very message.
Yeah, I'm grateful for it. And this is, for those watching, like this is how you get your life back. And a lot of people they go about their diabetes. Sometimes they don't even do anything about it because they think it's a lifelong sentence and the meds will just manage it. But some people do try to reverse it naturally. And what are some of the mistakes people are making trying to naturally reverse their diabetes?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that there's so many things. First of all, people do get on too restrictive diets too long. You have educated people on the benefits of ketosis. So have I for many years. But we tell people low carb too long can be a negative thing and literally start to break muscle down into sugar and actually make the problem worse. Of course, we teach solutions around that, and I have for years. And you've written many things about that as well as I have, but yet it seems like the world's not listening. Also, I think that people go, oh, detox. Okay, I'll just do a cleanse.
Yeah.
Like, okay, all right, it's not so simple. You don't just do a cleanse. Matter of fact, arguably, it makes most people worse. Whether it's the 10-day juice cleanse, the box cleanse, or whether it's cilantro, chlorella, the drops, that even saunas. I love saunas, but you're not going to the type of toxins that drive this are not going to just come pouring out in a sauna. If it were only so easy, if it were so easy, I wouldn't even be on this mission. And I have a sauna. I love saunas,
Same.
but again, it's just only part of opening up one single pathway. What I have to explain to people all the time is, and you, Ben, this has been my thing with doctors, right? This is where the problem is. Fix the cell, get well. But this is also where real detox is. You have to get rid of the toxins at the cellular level that are driving cellular inflammation, that are blocking the hormones, that are causing the drop in energy, that are causing people not to be able to burn fat as energy. And that means you could be skinny fat like I was, losing muscle and gaining fat in the wrong places, and people think you're skinny, right? It's like, but that's a cell problem. That's a mitochondrial problem. That mitochondria is broken. And that's a diabetes problem, right? It's like you're not able to use fat as energy. So it's like that was my issue. I was skinny, fat, unable to use fat for energy, broken, breaking my muscle down, lowering my metabolism worse. I was already pre-diabetic. By the end of my illness, I was already that, and my blood pressure went from low to high,
Mhm.
and an abnormal low, by the way. It was an indication actually I had a neurotoxic issue. So when we look at the explosion of diabetes, the explosion of thyroid and hormone problems, why isn't anybody addressing the toxic issue? So the big mistake people are making, natural mistakes, is just they're just spending a lot of wasted money on thinking that turmeric is the solution or ginger, and all these things are good. But the point is it's not like that. You have to deal with the cause. Did I answer that? I hope I answered that.
Yeah, you did. And there is a big difference between real cell detox, which you're referring to, versus some of the cleanses and saunas, which we're not against, but it's not getting to what you just showed, that drawing of those super
Yeah.
toxins. And, there's a classification of toxins that are, I learned from you, called diabetogens that
Mhm.
trigger, of
Yeah.
first, insulin resistance, which is pre-diabetes, and then full-on diabetes. And these studies are now starting to show you could change your diet, eat perfect, whole foods, clean foods, exercise, take all the supplements. But when you have these diabetogens, you cannot reverse this condition until you address it at the cell level, which is exactly what you're referring to here.
Yeah. Yeah. And, diabetogens, these are certain toxins that build up, they accumulate. So this is what I get very frustrated with. I hear that well, this particular toxin is safe because the EPA studied it, the FDA studied it, and it is below the limitation of safety. Okay, but the problem is that it accumulates in our tissue, the cell. It's like, so the accumulation is not what's studied. The amount of mercury that was coming off of my silver fillings going into my brain, and by the way, that's not my opinion, that's what happens, right? And I had other exposures unknowing to me, including my mom. The number one mercury exposure and lead is
Mm,
actually, there was a study called the DRASH study, is it comes from our mothers in utero. Literally, the number of silver fillings that contain 50% mercury in this study was proportional to how much mercury they found in the baby's brains. And that was
wild.
autopsy studies. Now
Wow.
we have plastic in every human brain. Oh, yeah, the number one cause of lead is moms because lead is stored in the bone and it's normal during pregnancy. Estrogen shifts, it's normal. But out comes, and you lose bone when it shifts, out comes lead. And that's not normal. And our parents and us grew up in the lead generation and into the baby in utero. So what does it do? Challenges the cellular detox pathways. So now you're starting life. I started life with challenge detox pathways, which set me up for the fall in my 30s. You see? So that's the issue. If that doesn't get fixed, you can do all the cleanses you want. But if you have to fix these pathways that have been now damaged because of the bioaccumulation of these diabetogens, obesogens, that article talked about obesogens. These are types of toxins that make us fat. How do they do it? Right here. That's how they do it. Oh, also, here's how they do it. As an example, some hormones, I'll use thyroid hormone as the example, have to convert to active forms. T4 is an inactive form that has to convert to the active form that attaches to that receptor. In this conversion, certain toxins can block that conversion. So now you're taking T4 as a hormone and not able to convert it. Oh, there's one more problem that toxins cause. There's a place in our brain. I'm going to draw probably not as good of a human as I did.
Not as good as the cell drawing, I could assure you.
That's actually pretty good. I think that's really good.
Good for you. It's good for you.
Good for you. That's actually a pretty good human. Okay, but in the brain, and that's all I care for you to see, there's a control tower that controls all of our hormones. So many hormone problems, even diabetes, thyroid, any of them, can be right here. So the control tower is the hypothalamus pituitary. Your hypothalamus is a gland that takes incoming information in from your body. Hey, we need more of this, we need less of this. And then it signals the pituitary to say, produce it. Send a message, the pituitary, down to your thyroid, down to your adrenals, down to wherever, right? And that whole system works in this perfect balance. See, your innate intelligence knows when you need more insulin, when you need more, you have too much glucose, when you need a little more of this, more thyroid, right? It's like it knows. Matter of fact, when your fat starts building up, fat cells, this is cool. Your fat cells start accumulating. You know what it does? It produces something called leptin. It's a hormone. And then leptin goes up and it signals that hypothalamus, that part of the control tower. It has little receptors on that to that leptin hormone, okay? And then it tells the system to burn more fat. Isn't that cool? So as
Yeah.
fat cells start accumulating, your brain gets a message by this hormone leptin to start burning more fat. So what does it do? It keeps you skinny. It
Yeah.
keeps you feeding from your fat. But what if it's broken? What
Mm,
if toxins start accumulating on those receptors and you can't hear that hormone? It's the same problem. Oh, and by the way, it affects diabetes too, because those hormones all feed from each other. So do you understand? Toxins are affecting the control tower. Oh, toxins, by the way, can bind to the thyroid itself, and your own immune system sees mercury because it's attached to what we call a selenium receptor. That's just how it works. But mercury loves it and attaches to it. But now your immune system looks at this mercury complex on your thyroid as abnormal. So you know what it does? It starts attacking the tissue, AKA autoimmune. And the same thing can happen to your hormone itself. Your own immune system could start attacking it, literally, because of toxins. Toxins are driving autoimmune insulin resistance, autoimmune diabetes, autoimmune thyroid conditions. So the point is toxins are causing it here, toxins are causing it here, toxins are causing it on the transitions, toxins are causing it here. It's no wonder, Ben, 80 some percent estimation that the cause of diabetes is toxins.
Mm.
So when you look at the autoimmune component, all of the things that we just talked about, you're talking about 80 some percent of diabetes is purely toxin driven. Matter of fact,
Wow.
eat a perfect diet. Don't eat processed food. You technically then could still have diabetes. You know that we've had people get diabetes because of a moldy home. Literally, they end up in a moldy home that they move into unknowingly, and all of a sudden, boom, they end up with
Mm.
diabetes a year later. That's what toxins can do. Yeah. Do you know that people can get so much of a certain chemical exposure all at once that it can trigger them just in a few months and put them in a state of diabetes? And they're going to take the medication, they're going to change their diet, and they're going to take all their expensive supplements, and they're not going to get well because nobody showed them.
Until now, you're showing us. Well,
Mhm.
before we get into how to test for cellular inflammation, how to actually identify these toxins, I want to discuss insulin resistance a little bit because insulin resistance is also called hyperinsulinemia. It's the first thing that happens before type 2 diabetes or even type 1 diabetes in some cases, and it's also linked to PCOS as well. What are maybe some 2 to 3 actionable strategies those watching right now can immediately start to do to reverse insulin resistance and start improving their cell health?
Look, I said toxins are the number one driver, right? There's another big one that you can start doing and you should start doing on Monday, okay? And is getting rid of toxic bad fats in your diet. Vegetable oils, canola oils, rancid seed oils and processed foods, and you could be exposed to these in health food stores too. The reason why is, Ben, I think you've done a good, maybe the best job on social media making people aware of this. But these fats come in to the membranes like toxins, and they're not there for hours. They're not there for days. They're not there even for months. They're there for over a year, over a
Yeah.
year. I mean, meaning that they'll drive inflammation. Why? Remember I said I taught y'all that this is a lipid bilayer? Well, omega-6 that is so important in this cell membrane is so rancid in most of the foods that we're eating, these oils, vegetable oil, canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, most of the sesame seed oils, because they're fragile. They're damaged when you process them. Could you make one of these oils good? Yes, but that's not what we're eating, is it? Okay, so we shouldn't be eating that. You go to a country like Italy, they're using olive oil, which is more stable. But in this country, it's cheap. These seed oils, plant oils are very inexpensive. And therefore, that's what's in everything, not everything, but most foods that we're eating. So on
Yeah.
Monday, you all can start to say, I'm going to get these out of my family, out of my, and you should. And, God willing, that message is getting out, but they drive cellular inflammation and they stay in your cells for a long time. So
Yeah.
I beg all of you, if you hear us go to dinner, we say we are allergic to vegetable and canola oil. And the vegetable and canola oil are the ones that they use in restaurants. Right?
Yeah.
That's why we say that. But when you go to stores, just avoid the oils. We have seed oil cards, that, here, we don't want these oils or, avoid these oils. Olive oil is a better choice, but, tallows, saturated fats, grass-fed butters, ghee, these are the oils that take heat the best. So, anyways, I don't want to give a whole lecture on it, but it's something that they can do right away.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I'll give the audience a list to write down to just do an audit on your foods. It's canola, corn, cottonseed, sunflower, soybean, safflower, rice bran, and grapeseed oil. Those are the 8 ones you want to make sure they're not processed if you have them, and if you do have them, make sure you don't have them actually, because you're right. 680 days is the half-life of these bad fats, meaning 2 years, half of them will still be in that cell membrane creating inflammation. So that's going to benefit anybody who's on this call right here. Now, we need to talk about the testing because you referenced that there's a specific test that I believe is about 50 times more accurate than any blood test looking at cellular inflammation that you used to only offer to your doctors that used to train, but you're going to offer it on today's webinar. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't know how we're doing that. I'll bring one of my team members on perhaps, but we'll put it in the chat, I think, or something, or a link, something. But it measures, the beauty of it is this, the simplicity, right? And this is why we've used this for a long, long time. They use it in a lot of the studies for autoimmune, actually. They use it in many, many different studies. Why? Because it shows cellular inflammation by measuring something called melendaldehyde. Okay, very accurate, but you can throw it off. If you drank it the night before, you produce a lot of aldehydes, which are inflammatory. So we don't want you to drink the night before. You can drink the night after. And I'm not promoting anything here, but I'm just saying, just for one night, but you don't want to do that because it would throw off the results. But they're going to get, because we're offering it to them simply and not through their doctor, they're going to get a couple things to make this work as we thought it through. Number one, you're going to get a video of me explaining how to take it. It's very simple. It's urine, by the way. So, and you send it in. So there's no blood. You don't even have to prick your finger. So that's easy, but you'll still have a video of me. Number two, you're going to get included in the price. And okay, I'll say this right up front. This whole package that we're giving you it's a right around $500. That includes the time of my expert to give you a report of findings of your test, but we're doing it all for $97, and I believe that is true.
That's correct. I
That
see it
includes the
here.
price. Okay, that
Yeah.
includes the price, and that includes the time with my expert who I train weekly to go over it with you. And also, I told them to make sure that you fill out something called a neurotoxic assessment. What is that? Ben, you use it. We all use it. Every
Yeah.
doctor I've trained uses this assessment, which has gotten better and better over 20 years. Certain toxins have a certain fingerprint, meaning mold illness, heavy metals, certain infections, all of which can drive this, right? So we want you to fill this out, and that way my expert can look at some of the causative factors that you've had. Ultimately, we want to know if we can help you, if you have cellular inflammation, and then we can absolutely point you in the right direction. So I didn't want to do this, or you actually didn't want to do this unless we had somewhere to point them, because you and I both have done things like this, and then we don't offer them the solution. I wish in an hour thing, teaching like this, I could give you what I've taught for 20 years or what I taught Ben. It's not going to happen. But first step, do you have cellular inflammation? Second step is, can we help you? And what potential diabetes have you been exposed to that can drive the cellular inflammation? And if you get to, man, I'm telling you, watch what happens in your life. Same thing that happened in mine, same thing happened in Ben's. But start there, get the test. I couldn't have made it any easier for you. It's $500. That's real value there of that. And we did it for 97. So Ben, they should thank you for that, because you put that whole thing together.
Yeah, well, I thank you and your team for putting it together, because that is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to get them the information and give them this paradigm shift, because it's different than what they've heard, but also, okay, what can we do about it? I saw so many comments here, Vernon, Crystal, like, how do I know how much inflammation I have? What is this testing kit? And that's a part of this. You get that cellular inflammation testing kit, very easy to do. It takes a couple minutes. You do it at home, you get a result. But not only are you going to see the result, part of this is you get somebody to actually go over, interpret those results, and that NTQ, that neurotoxic questionnaire, that alone, it's kind of priceless, because it actually identifies where the exposures have come from, what has led to the cellular inflammation. So not only are you understanding how much cellular inflammation you have, which is valuable, but where have they come from? And you get somebody who has a trained under Dr. Pompa.
And that's where it came from. It's like, okay, let's offer them the cellular inflammation test, because that's where we always start, no matter what. But then it was like, well, that's useless, because you have the expert on the other side now they need that. So it literally ended up to be two steps, because they'd be like, okay, you need to fill this out, because the next question is what's driving the cellular inflammation. So that's why we did both and did the call. So that was your idea.
And that's only available for this special group right here. So if you're really serious about reversing your diabetes, your pre-diabetes, your insulin resistance, like, take advantage. Click the link in the chat and check that out. We're gonna get us some questions here. Is that okay, Dr. Pompa? Can we answer some questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take some questions. I think we have one of our staff team members.
Andrea from the team is gonna come on here and
Awesome.
pull some questions for us to answer. because I know that there's a lot of comments here, a lot of questions here. So we'll get Andrea on here. And I'm really excited for all of you who are watching this right now, who are taking advantage. I wish my dad would have had this offer. I mean, he would still be with me today. And there is the wonderful Andrea. Hi, Andrea.
Oh, so good to see you both. So good to see you both. Well, we have a lot of questions. I've been watching the questions in the chat. Also, really great comments. Everybody's so appreciative of the stuff that you're teaching them tonight. And it's such valuable information that you're offering.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful to be a part of this. So yeah, what do we have in the question box?
Yeah. So one question from Brian is, if your test comes back positive, how are you able to help?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The good point, right? It's like that's why I said, okay, the neurotoxic questionnaire assessment has to be there because the next step is, okay, great, what's driving the cellular inflammation, and then we're able then to specifically say, okay, this is what you need to do. Look, this sounds trite. It sounds so simple. If you remove the interference, the body heals. What I've taught for 20 years is how to do that. This is what I teach, but my process of how to fix the cell is what I'm known for. This is where I travel the world speaking and teaching on. And that's what Ben saw almost 7 years ago when he said, okay, I want to learn that. What we're teaching people is that process. And I can't teach it on an hour webinar, but it's real and it works. And that I can assure you. And you'll be able to do it. And it's different for you than it is Mary or Joe, meaning that it's very specific. It's not here's a box that you figure out. It doesn't work like that. It's very specific. I hope you appreciate the fact that we just have to start by looking at who can we help, right? If you have cellular inflammation, step one. Step two is if there's been some different exposures to neurotoxins and neurotoxic illness, we can help. So I hope you appreciate that. Listen, I said this and I mean it. I would never say I can help everybody, but what's happening in diabetes excites me more, in thyroid, I would say, more than any conditions. The reason I don't treat either one of them, by the way, nor does Ben, but when you get to the cause, and everybody is missing this major causative factor of these specific toxins. And there's only one way. You can't get rid of them by doing a cleanse. And that was a great question, Ben, that you asked, because people get more sick, you get worse. So what you're going to learn, hopefully, if you take advantage of it, is going to change your life and your families. That I know.
Absolutely. Okay, well, Bernadette has a question. She says, I have heard from other doctors that saturated fats increase insulin resistance. Is that true?
That is such old dogma. Saturated fat, and I'll challenge it even further, in cholesterol. I have helped so many autistic cases over the years. And one of the things, and Andrew, I teach a whole seminar on the membrane. The two fats that you start with to stabilize that membrane are saturated fat and cholesterol. Isn't it odd that those are the very fats that are probably the most, villainized of all of them? If I asked the average person on the street, give me two bad fats, they would most likely say saturated fat and cholesterol. And if they were a little privy in the health space, they would say omega-6. And so the fact is that those two fats are very important to stabilizing that membrane. So that is some bad information. God gave us saturated fat, and it's needed. It's a tool.
I agree. I would just say it builds those cell membranes. It's needed. These saturated fats are very important.
Yeah. Ben is so passionate about this issue. You created an allergy card so that you would only eat good fats when you go to a restaurant.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't want to take the hit, right? You're really diligent about that too, Andrea, because you know how dangerous these bad fats are. It's not the saturated fats. The saturated fats are very stable. They're very healthy. It's these polyunsaturated fats, vegetable oils, basically.
And by the way, not to bore people with the science, but I can't help but teach. The amount of double
bonds,
is basically tells you how stable or not stable a fat is. So, for example, saturated fats have 0 double bonds. They're saturated. That's why you can fry in them. Literally, take beef tallow, you can fry in it. Our grandparents fried in beef tallow. We should go back to that too. McDonald's used to fry in beef tallow. And then they started using vegetable oils. Heart disease, cancer went like this because it drives cellular inflammation, folks. And then the toxin explosion, driving cellular inflammation. We're not getting to the cause. I hope everyone hears that. And if you get to the cause, you're going to get your lives back. But the saturated fats are stable. And then you have olive oil, which is a monosaturated fat, meaning one double bond, so more stable. And then seed oils can be 2 and 3 double bonds, a little more or less stable, right? So, as you add double bonds, the more unstable things get.
Yeah. Okay. So Susan asks, or she says, I had mercury fillings removed 30 years ago. Does that help at all?
Well, the answer is probably not for 2 reasons. Okay. Because number one, when you just drill on mercury fillings, I got sick days after that. So there has to be a proper protocol. We teach a whole protocol on how to remove those safely. But also, most those fillings were vaporizing mercury that crosses the blood-brain barrier. That's a barrier that protects your brain, crosses it, and that mercury is accumulated in your brain. That was my issue. And it accumulated in, if you remember, my pituitary hypothalamus. And if you look at the studies on that, those fillings, let's do this, it's worth doing. These fillings in the mouth, now I'm going to try to draw a filling. I can't even draw a head. They vaporize mercury. Oh, my pen ran out. They
There's
vaporize mercury.
kind of a glare on your paper
Oh,
too.
okay.
There,
So if there's your
better, better.
fillings, let's just call these mercury fillings, right? And then they vaporize mercury, cross the blood-brain barrier. And what the study shows, most of that mercury ends up in the hypothalamus pituitary. I didn't tell that part of my story, but when I was trying to figure out my hormone issues, I realized I have a problem, being able to read scientific literature helped. I have a problem in my control tower in my hypothalamus pituitary. So I was trying to address that. Some things got better, some things actually got way worse. And I just couldn't figure out. I remember the day that I read the study showing that mercury and other heavy metals accumulates right there, especially mercury from fillings. So the answer to your question is just taking the fillings out doesn't get the mercury out of the brain. Sitting in a sauna doesn't get the mercury out of the brain. And by the way, most diabetes and hormone problems, they call it central hypothyroid, central diabetes, where it's the problems here. So part of what I've taught Ben and I became, popular for was my brain phase of detox and how to get those things out of the brain. And that is the challenge to fixing a lot of the hormone imbalance. So great question.
Yeah, absolutely. We have so many great questions coming in. We have one here from Rebecca. She says, earlier it was mentioned that someone could have a perfect diet and exercise regularly, but it wouldn't make a difference if the diabetes weren't fixed. How do you fix them?
That's what we're talking about. And by the way, I don't want to discourage anyone from changing their diet. I think you should change your diet. I mean, because remember, food is a vehicle for a lot of these things that we're talking about, right? Do you realize the amount of aluminum exposure that we're getting from food today and water? You know why that is? They're using aluminum in jet fuel to make it more efficient. Literally, it saves them billions of dollars by making planes travel further on less gas. And yet it's a formula that aluminum is part of that's falling out of the skies into the water, into the food. Not to mention what we're spraying on the food, not to mention, the hormones that they're giving the animals. So the point is we want to change our diet. But the problem is people get very discouraged because they do change their diet and they either get partly better, some better, feel better, but still not better. That's because they're missing what we're talking about. So the answer to your question is what do we do? That's you're going to see. It's going to blow you away. It's more simple than you think. Start with the inflammation test. That's my advice. Start there. Do you have it?
Great. Okay. We have a question here from Nessa, which is grew up in a house with lead pipes. Mother painted my throat with, I don't know how to say this actually, mercurochromotherapy for a year and a half.
Painted her what?
Her throat.
Oh, her throat.
Yeah. With mercury chromo daily. But will the test help with this?
Is it merchromic? Is it one word? Merchromicoid? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a mercury derivative like thimerosal
Mhm.
that they were.
Pro every day.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you absorbed that. Obviously, they stopped doing that practice. But my father. Do you remember methylate? So many drugs back when we grew up. I'm going to be 60. Just put a number on it. So this year. So so when we grew up, I don't know who we are, but anyways, Ben, maybe even when you grew up, I don't know. But a lot of them had anything with myrrh was mercury, and OSE on the ends was also, gosh, there was another, maybe it was 4 letters. I can't remember. But so they put mercury in a lot of products. My father used methylate on me, which had mercury in it. I didn't know. And he would put it on every wound, everything. I had so many mercury exposures. Contact lens fluid, 70s, 80s, and early 90s had mercury we were putting right in our brain. That mercury's still there. Oh, it's too little. It's safe in the amount that the FDA, EPA allows. Oh, yeah, but what they don't tell you is 80% of it stays in your brain. It stays in your body. Do you know that fluoride? Do you realize that fluoride, another hormone disruptor, right? And thank God they're taking it out of water with resistance. 50% of it stays in you, stays in you. And it's a known cancer causer, drops IQ in kids. And these are studies that finally, last year, a big study finally came out that just blew the lid off the whole thing, right? But again, it's the same argument. Well, here's what they say. You're getting the amount in water that's under what the EPA considers safe by half. Okay, what if you're drinking more water? So we can't get now. What if you drink 4 times more water? You're getting 4 times the exposure. It makes no sense. It's like so. Anyways, even then, I would argue, even if it's under half, 50% of it's accumulating. No one's looked at lifetime accumulation for mercury. No one's looked at lifetime accumulation for lead, plastic, none of it. But these are all causing disruption right here. If we don't get to that, we're never going to get our lifestyle. You'll spend another 10, 20,000, whatever it is. You're going to keep spending it on the quick solution. It's not going to happen until you get to the cause. It sounds ridiculous for me to keep saying it, but it is that simple. It is. So anyways, I get fired up I'm fired up because that fluoride thing, I read it today because, Congress is putting out a thing, about some of this stuff and it's driving me insane. So,
Mm,
I love the passion. I love
right.
it.
Passion for the truth, right? And
Yeah.
things that are making people sick, it makes you angry. And that's
Yeah.
what we appreciate about you. Okay, we have a question from Deborah. She says, thank you for your information. What role does glyphosate play in toxic insulin resistance?
oh my gosh, Deborah, thank you for the question. I call it the perfect storm. 2012, senior scientist at MIT, Stephanie Seneff, was the first to put out a study proving that glyphosate opens up the protective barrier of the brain, that blood-brain barrier, and allows the toxins that we already have bioaccumulated, mercury, aluminum, lead, to cross deeper into the brain. And she believes it's why we're seeing a lot of these hormone type of conditions that we're discussing, even neurodegenerative conditions from dementia to Alzheimer's. She believes it's why we're seeing this explosion. She believes also it's leading to the autoimmune. And glyphosate is opening up this protective barrier. It's also opening up the gut barrier and allowing food, undigested proteins from food to cross, driving autoimmune. Glyphosate is the perfect storm because it's literally destroying our own protective barriers against everything that we're talking about. You add that with these other toxins, and it's an absolute recipe for disaster. And yet you can still go to at Home Depot, or I was just in an Ace Hardware and I did a video. I was like this because it makes me so mad. A whole shelf of products that contain glyphosate, despite that billions of dollars have been awarded to glyphosate's direct link to cancer and other hormone related conditions. And it's still being sold in Home Depot. Forever chemicals that we're all being exposed to. These are chemicals that have been proven to cause hormone disruption, diabetes, and other cancers, and we're still allowed to be exposed. Do you realize that every country in the world is cracking down on these toxins? We're still being fully exposed here in the United States. Our only defense is right here, what God gave us. The once your cells, these detox pathways start to slow down, now we are victim to becoming a statistic. And if all of these alternative doctors, if they're not fixing that, they're not fixing anybody, because this is the problem. This is why we have hormone disruption, the diabetes explosion, the thyroid explosion, the autoimmune explosion. Toxins are driving this. If we can fix this, these pathways, we get fixed. That's how I got my life back. And that's my passion. And that's what my wife's prophetic words were spoken over me, that not only is he going to get me well, that I'm going to take a message to the world. That's the message. You all are going to get it, and you're going to learn more about it than my doctors. Trust me. And it's going to save your life. And you're going to be pain to purpose. And there's one more P that I add on: pain to purpose to a promise. You made it this far. No doubt about it. You or somebody else is praying for you, and God has a promise for you. Pain to purpose to a promise. That promise was what my wife held on to before I even believed it.
Mm.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. Angela asks, can you fast with diabetes?
Well, Ben, you can answer that because you probably get that a lot, right? Yeah. The question becomes, what kind of fast? Fasting is a stress. And if you have diabetes or metabolic stress already, jumping into a fast that works for me, a 5-day water fast, which I talk about and taught about for many, many years, probably is too much. So how we fast someone with diabetes or thyroid conditions is very different. And you learn that. So I've been teaching that. Ben, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and also it depends if you're type 1 versus type 2, but I think majority of people on here are going to be type 2. And if it's intermittent fasting, which is 16 hours daily, 18 hours daily, that should be okay for most diabetics. However, it is important to work with a practitioner, monitor your blood glucose and ketones, and that's exactly what we teach the people we work with.
And that's the point. There's something called partial fasting where you're actually still eating. There's intermittent fasting, and then there's pure water fasting. And by the way, I realized I had this in front of me. I'm going to show this.
Oh, yeah.
This to me is the most simple thing. Like, how did toxins get you here to diabetes? And my dog may interrupt this. You lay down, Midgie. This is where most of you are. You see that glass where that water line is? Matter of fact, most of you are probably even higher than that. Okay. And I'm going to actually, we even brought a towel for this very purpose. So here's where I was, meaning toxins build up in utero through our life. And all of a sudden, one day, everything overflows. And that's where many of you are. And you just add a little bit of stress to your life, and that those toxins keep just overflowing. And then they stop. You feel good again, right? It's like a little bit of stress and the toxins, the headaches, the pain, the problems, the anxiety. Like, think of that as that water overflowing. This stress bucket, mostly, I can't do anything about your emotional stress, but most of it's toxic stress at the cellular level. And one day it overflows. That was my dental appointment. But if you get it to here, look at the stress this person can take. This is where you have to get to, right? This person, compromised cellular pathways. This person, everything functioning, burning energy normal, right? A lot of stress and no symptoms, right? So I think it's a very simple way to understand. How did I got my life back? I got this to here. And that to me is a clear vision of how we get our lives back. But the problem is, you don't get to here by a 10-day cleanse. You don't get to here by a simple taking some detox drops. Andrea, how many years have I been so frustrated with that message, right?
So many years.
So many years, right? It's like you get there by fixing what God gave us in every one of us. These pathways that get rid of toxins every day, like the damper, right? Letting the smoke out. That's where the real deal is. That's real detox. That's how we get lives back. To answer the question before, that's what takes down the cellular inflammation. Of course, we have specific things to target that as well. That's what gets the hormone receptors repairing, right? That's what allows our DNA to be turned back off. And yes, It can be. Studies show it, and everything in those studies, we do. And
Mhm.
yes, the cellular energy will come back only when we open up these pathways again.
Mhm.
That's what excites me for all of you. So,
Yeah. Step one, take the test. Step two,
mhm.
identify your sources, right? And we need to take personal responsibility for doing that because nobody else is doing that for us.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
Next question. Does lifting weights, sauna, and cold plunge therapy help?
It can. When I was sick, I didn't have the cellular energy to lift weights, and I had lifted since I was 15 and never not. And so, but I realized that it was making me worse, not better. Whether it's exercise, saunas, or cold baths, they apply to a premise called hormesis, meaning they only work by stressing you. Now, the premise of hormesis is this: if you stress a biological system and it adapts, that's the key part. You get stronger, faster, healthier, etc. If you stress a biological system with a cold bath, exercise, sauna, and it doesn't adapt, you get weaker, sicker, right? More unhealthy, slower. So that's why good trainers know how to recover an athlete, push them, add stress when you have to, look at all the key indicators that they're recovering or not, overtraining or not, and they inch up their performance, right? But we don't think about that when we do a cold bath. Ben, you could tell a story here because I'm one of the only people in this space that are warning people that 3 minutes in a cold bath is far too much stress for people
Yeah.
to adapt to. And yes, you get worse, not better. I love cold baths when you do it for what your body, not Ben's body, is able to adapt to. And if you're challenged, it could be way less than you think. Ben, you can
Yeah.
tell your story.
Yeah, and it goes to that example you just showed with the 2 cups. If your stress bucket is full, then a 3 minute cold plunge or even strength
Great.
training, CrossFit workout, it's just too much of a
Too
stress for your
much.
body to adapt to. But we're all different. When I got my cold plunge, um, I had to adapt to it. Now I could go for 4 minutes at 49 degrees and be just fine because I've lowered that stress bucket. I've gotten rid of the toxins. But in the beginning, no way. I mean, it could have been a huge stressor for me and it would flare up my autoimmune. Now it does not because I addressed it at a root level and I got rid of those toxins.
You
So
noticed you noticed on your aura ring, your heart rate variability was getting worse, not
yeah,
better.
correct. Yeah. So it was showing that my nervous system was just getting jacked up with too much sympathetic from that stressor. And that could be the cold plunge, the sauna, the workout, all these biohacks out there. It's not that they're bad. It's that you just made the brilliant case that stress is really important when you adapt to it. So many times people are doing these stressors thinking they're doing something healthy for themselves, but they're not adapting to the stress because their toxicity bucket is full. But the great news is once you start lowering that toxicity bucket, you can start doing these stressors, adapting to it, and getting stronger and healthier.
When I was sick, I could take like literally 10-minute walks. And I learned because I tried to work out and I'd feel worse. I'd sleep worse. I'd feel worse later that day and worse the next day.
Wow.
I learned that I had to just take very small walks, and that did me good. Eventually, as my bucket lowered, I was able to go from walks to, I remember the first day I rode my biking. I was a cyclist, and when I started getting sick, I pulled back. I thought I was just overtraining, and things weren't improving. So I knew something deeper was wrong because a good athlete will realize if they just pull back their training, it'll get their body time to adapt, and then they can work up the stress again and adapt and get stronger. But my bucket was full of a lot of neurotoxins, so I wasn't able to bike again. But that day that I started biking, I was able to bike. I literally, I'm not kidding, I did like 1 or 2 miles on a flat thing, but it was a victory. I slept that night. So,
Wow.
yeah,
The things you take for granted, right? When you get sick, you said you couldn't even walk more than 10 minutes. It's like,
I'd be left exhausted.
yeah,
Yeah. And
wow.
like, some things you do and you think that you feel better. Like people will get out of a 3-minute cold bath and go, I feel amazing because you have adrenaline, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
But then the problem is what happens later, right? That's what
yeah.
I teach Ben, right? How did you feel later that day? How did you sleep that night? And how did you feel the next day? That's
Mhm.
what really determines whether you've adapted to that stress or not. So, long answer to your question. Maybe, weightlifting could be good for you, but listen to your body. That will determine if you're violating the premise of hormesis and wasting too much energy towards that instead of healing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
great question. Great answer.
Okay, Kristen asks, you mentioned thimerosal, a mercury substitute. Does that cause cellular inflammation?
Oh, like mad. So, I mean, it's a mercury's in there, and mercury is massive cellular inflammation driver. All heavy metals are. And my pet peeve is how our space, regular medicine will give an acute exposure to metals with an IV, and that's actually appropriate for acute exposure. The problem is it's not appropriate for a chronic exposure. Heavy metals bioaccumulate, there's the word again, store up in our tissues, in our cells. And there's a specific way that we get them out, especially out of the brain in the deep tissue. That's what I've been teaching for 20 years. I'm going to say it again. I'm not so smart that I think I am so smart that I figured it out. I'm telling you, God gave it to me. What you're going to learn and experience, God willing, that's why you're here, is what everything that God showed me. And there's a specific way to get those out. And heavy metals is one. We're talking about other toxins called biotoxins. These are worse than plastic. These are worse than even forever chemicals. These things, when you look at the research on biotoxins, they could be from infections, they could be from mold exposures, and these are just examples. But when they get in that pituitary hypothalamus, it literally shuts off hormones. And poor people are downstream trying to figure out why they're hormonally not right. And that's your average pre-diabetic or diabetic,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, PCOS, all these other hormone problems that now start occurring, and now you end up with a thyroid condition, but your blood works normal, but you have a thyroid issue because your hair is thinning and your skin is dry and you're constipated half the time. Yes, your thyroid's not working, but it's because toxins are blocking it from getting in the cell. Doesn't matter what your blood work looks like. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's worth repeating.
Yeah. And, speaking of repeating, I think it's important to share again what they're getting with this special offer here on the webinar. You mentioned that cellular inflammation testing kit, which is a urine test. It's shipped out to you. It's part of the offer. It takes a few minutes to do at the comfort of your own home. So it'll show you in a matter of minutes how much cellular inflammation you have. So you understand, okay, this is the cause to my condition. And then you also have somebody who you'll book a call with to analyze those results, go over a report of findings with you, and then assess where the inflammation has come from, where has these toxins came from throughout your entire life. It's a very comprehensive questionnaire called the neurotoxic questionnaire. I remember when I first did that NTQ, it was one of the best things I ever did because yes, I did lab work, I did certain tests, and I did eventually do the cellular inflammation test, which was great. But when I saw my exposures over my entire lifespan, which is what that document goes through, that was incredible for me because it actually showed me where the exposures came from. And you get all of that, and it's discounted for you. There's a link in the chat box. Anything you want to add to that, Dr. Pompa?
I mean, and by the way, that $500, my doctors will charge different numbers. It could be 400 to 600 range. It depends on what parts of the country. You're getting it for $97. So, I mean, the test alone is worth that and more. So, that test, because it shows cause. If you paid $1,000 for it, it's worth it. You know how much money I wasted on testing?
Same.
Uh, yeah. So it's like, my gosh. You're finally doing something that actually shows cause. Andrea, I want you to share your experience, your story, because you watched me draw that cell. You had hope.
Mm,
You had autoimmune Hashimoto's.
yep.
You had other autoimmune conditions stacking up from rheumatoid.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell that.
Yeah, well, I always start with, it took me like 3 times to watch your video. And I always tell people, don't do what I did because I shouldn't have waited 3 times to watch your video because I didn't realize that that video would change my life. And it was the video of you drawing the cell. And you start drawing the cell and you're talking about toxins and the cellular communication. And you can take supplements, you can do every diet, you can do all of these things. And I was thinking, this is what I'm doing. I'm a health coach. I work in a wellness office. I'm taking every supplement. I'm doing every diet. I mean, I'm doing everything. Therapies, you name it. Therapies before people knew about therapies. And yet I was stacking autoimmune and I couldn't understand why until I watched your video. I took the meta-oxy test. I literally just, I became probably
You did
like,
exactly what I'm telling them to do.
Yes.
absolutely. And I watched every podcast. You had 100 podcasts at that time. I watched every single one as fast as I could. And I kept wanting to know more and more and more. And I implemented your detox right away before I ever met you. I implemented it and it started changing my life. My Hashimoto's or the Hashimoto's, right, is no longer a symptom for me. I don't,
And you haven't been on a medication how many years?
well, let's see. I've been with you for 9, so probably 9, I think probably almost 10 years now because I started
Wow.
after watching your first video.
That's
Yeah.
amazing, Andrea.
If that doesn't give you hope, folks,
Um,
okay, nothing will. You know,
mhm,
the same cause that caused all her autoimmune, which is most of what diabetes is, most thyroid is autoimmune, just not diagnosed. You know, all of her conditions, all of her symptoms, she's healthy. You know, she's
mhm,
amazing. So,
yeah.
anyway, she's on the mission, pain to purpose, and
And
God
I'm
had a
in my
promise.
promise. I'm in my promise. Blessed every
You know
day.
what? And y'all hear me say this all the time, right? I warn people when you're about to step into a promise God has for you, and I believe you made it this far, He has you here for a reason. You're about to step into a promise of healing and change in your life, but you have to step in. But there's 3 words biblically. These are Hebrew words, Rak, Kazak, Amatz. The English translation is be strong and courageous. In the Bible, when you see someone that was going to step into something God had for them, those 3 words are spoken. So you could look in your Bibles, be strong, and courageous, and you'll find several places where that happens. But God's in every one of those times in the Bible sent somebody to speak Rak Kazak Amatz to the people stepping into a promise. Here's why. They became fearful about what they know they had to do or needed to do or God wanted them to do, and they stopped in their fear. All the doubts, all the problems start coming to their mind. So, as one example, Israel's ready to cross the Jordan into the promise. 40 years they waited for. You know what they saw? 31 armies. That's all they saw that were bigger, badder than them. And they came up with every excuse not to have what God wanted for them. Don't make that mistake. But
That's
let me
right.
give you the Hebrew translation of Rakazakamats. It means God stepped in before you into the promise. Every fear you have, every doubt you have, He has dealt with that. All
Mhm.
you have to do is step in. That's all He wanted Israel to do, step in. As Solomon was getting the commands from his father to do this, he was in such fear. God spoke through his father, Rakazakamats, be strong and courageous, Solomon, because this is what I'm going to do. Right? God was going to do it, and Solomon just had to step into that. So, that's what I tell you, that all step into the promise God has for you, but you're going to have to let Him do it. His strength, not yours. That's the paraphrase of what Rakazakamats means.
Mhm.
Love it.
I like it's a good time to close with this comment that is from Christina. She says, even though it didn't come easy, I'm grateful for the message God gave you. Thank you for sharing, for trying to help others in need of this information.
Mm,
Thank you.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. But you know what? He has a purpose for you too, no
hmm
doubt. And more importantly, He has a promise for you too, Christina. So,
Pain to purpose to promise. We all have it. We
Yeah, we do. Well, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Dr. Pompa.
yep.
Everybody, look, you have the link in the chat box if you're really serious about reversing your diabetes, your pre-diabetes, insulin resistance. Take advantage. Get the offer, get the kit, get the consultation, get the NTQ form. It's in the chat box. I want to thank you, Dr. Pompa, for everything I've learned. I mean, I hear this information from you all the time, and I just every time I still learn something new. Today was no exception. I learned so many amazing tips from you, and I just love when you draw the cell. Your cell was perfect today. Thank you for sharing that, and everybody, thank you for joining us today. Any closing words, Dr. Pompa?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, we're not asking them to do anything different than the 3 of us have done.
Right.
That's my closing words. And we all sit on the other side in the promise,
Mhm.
that God had for us, and that's healing. So I prayed for you all. I really do. But choose it. There's my last words.
Amen. All right. Until next time. Thank you, everybody.